Well, if we run a security meeting, who knows anything about security, and who are we going to call? So, of course, the guy that I called, all right, is a guy I used to work with in the 112 precinct in Forest Hills, all right, and that's Tom LaFell. Of course, now Tom is at the great rank of lieutenant, and he heads the Counterterrorism Unit for Queens North. Thank you, I got that right. All right, so Tom said, yeah, sure, no problem. We tried to work in an earlier date, they couldn't do it. All right, so he's down and he's with us today, and that is terrific. So he brought Police Officer Stephen Vranick with us.
Yes, sir.
And Steve is going to get us a briefing.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting us. I appreciate it. I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about Counterterrorism Unit. And within that unit, there's some subsets that you might not be aware of, and the different functions and what we do. Okay, because sometimes people are confused. They just see us driving around. They're, what is this? There's sirens, there's this and that. So I'm going to try and do a little synopsis on what we do. I know I have an informed crowd here, so that should be very helpful. All right, now, first of all, our Counterterrorism Division unit is citywide, okay? It's broken down into boroughs, Queens North, Queens South, but it's citywide. We have a citywide initiative. Now, all our counterterrorism deployments, all right, what are they based on? Intelligence. Intelligence is what drives us, all right? And what we need to know is real-time, actionable intelligence and threats. Not that there's any threats now, but whether it's false or fake, we follow up on everything, all right? So we make sure that our infrastructure is secure, some soft sites, you know, especially what you've been seeing in the news. You see a lot of active shooter, lone wolf scenarios. Situation like right now. Somebody comes in here, what are you doing? Any hands? Oh, good for you. Oh, you stay next to me. She said shoot him. Where are you going to go? How many means of egress do you have here? Okay. You have three options. Fight, flight, or shelter in place, correct? All right? All right. Now, when we do our deployments, we show force. Now, not force as far as physical, but our presence is dynamic. Why? Because as we know in the past, with the first attack of the World Trade Center in '93, what did the potential terrorists, what did the terrorists do? They did surveillance on us for about a year. Okay? So that's why when we do high visibility deployments and we go to an area, it's dynamic. Why? It's to disrupt possible terrorist activity, somebody doing surveillance, somebody that's thinking about doing something, they can say, you know what, maybe not today. Today's not a good day. NYPD is on, we're on it, okay? Now, before we turn out our members of the service, our executives, and our supervisors, each MOS, member of the service, they are debriefed. They're debriefed on the activity of the week, of the day. Could have been an hour from now, you know, an hour ago. So it's actionable intelligence, so it's like a living, breathing thing. It dictates what we do. Within a day, we might have an initiative or a deployment to a specific location. Now, within that deployment, during that tour, a couple of things might have happened, like the San Bernardino attack, something like that. Now, what happens? We redirect our resources, because what happens abroad could happen here, okay? So that's why we're always constantly evolving and moving. Now, the different deployments that we use within counterterrorism, you have critical response vehicles, which I'll get into it, the CRV is what they call it. I'm sure you've seen in Manhattan, you see a lot of cars going all over the place. I'll get into that in a minute. We have a Hercules deployment. We have a TOM deployment, which is transit order maintenance deployment. We do bag inspections, and we have a lot of neat little toys that we use. Some of them we brought tonight. Okay, now, my lieutenant will pass them out so you can take a look. That's a radiation pager. It detects radiation levels, okay? Now, as we see today, we were, unbeknownst to you, none of you have had a stress test recently because it went off the charts, okay? So that does traces of explosive, radiation. What the gentleman has in his hand there, that's a newer model, an upgrade, you would say like a 2.0 of it's called the flare system. Now what that does is that takes traces of explosives. You'll swab a bag, like we'll do it in subways, you swab a bag, or you swab a car, okay? and it detects different types of explosives. Okay? Now, getting back to what I was talking about with the CRVs, okay? That is manned by our new Critical Response Command, as you may have heard recently. Police Commissioner Bratton, Counterterrorism Commissioner Miller, and Mayor de Blasio, they put in place a CRC, which is a command of about 300 to 400 members of the service, police officers, that strictly their job is counterterrorism. They have special training, okay, and they are used now in the CRV. Now, like I said to you before, our officers are debriefed and they're told what their personal deployment is. Now, our deployments with CRV could be critical infrastructure, soft targets, and civilian locations, high value targets. Okay, so they're always moving around, and they're always and that's every day, and that's on 3 tours. Okay, so that's 24/7 that you have CRC deployed to critical locations, soft targets, and areas that could be a possible threat. All right. Now we also have a Hercules team. What that is, you've probably seen that. It's members of the emergency service. Okay, now they carry heavy weapons, and they are liaison with highway patrol, K-9, and intelligence officers. All right. Now, once again, why is that? And their movements are dictated every day. They go to several locations without a day, and when they arrive, it's dynamic. Why? It's to show force and deter possible threats. Okay, and you don't know when they're going to show up. So no one who potentially wants harm to the United States or to the city knows when they're going to arrive, when they're not going to arrive. So it keeps them on their back heels, which is what we want, because terrorists or potential terrorists, you don't want them to be on the offense. If they're on the offense, then they can do damage. If they're on the defense, it's harder for them to do damage because they're more worried about getting caught and disrupting their plans. Okay. Now, as I said to you earlier, the transit order maintenance sweeps, abbreviation is TOMS. Okay, what that is, that's a team of uniformed officers with a supervisor, and what they'll do is that they'll go down into the train stations. Now, they'll stop a car briefly, and each car, one member of the service, police officer, will get on that train, on that car, and they will search. And they'll just walk in, and they'll look around. Once again, members of the public or somebody that's looking to do us harm doesn't know where we are and when we're going to show up. Okay? And they know, well, you know what? NYPD, they're there. We're doing what we need to do. They are on top of it. Maybe not here. Maybe we'll go somewhere else. Maybe it's a deterrent. Once again, it's a deterrent. Everything's a deterrent. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that gentleman was holding, and they're passing around the flare machine. What that did is, how many of you have gone down in the transit system and you see sometimes there'll be bag checks? Okay? Now, you're not obligated to open up your bag, which we don't look in, but put it on the table. You're not obligated to be a part of that, but you're not getting in the system without without us scanning your bag. It takes about 30 seconds, and all it is a bag swipe, gets put in the machine, and just detects for, like I said, trace explosives. All right? Takes about 30 seconds, tops.
How sensitive is this device?
Extremely sensitive. Extremely sensitive. Okay. We also have within counterterrorism, we have a terrorism threat analysis group. Okay? It's staffed by civilian analysts. All right? They perform open source classified strategic intelligence analysis. All right? Now, what this group does is they disseminate the information to Counterterrorism Bureau, the private sector, okay, businesses, our military, and our intelligence community. Okay? They produce and provide weekly reports and special analysis to us. Okay? So we're informed. Okay. Also within the counterterrorism, we have what they call a TRIPS unit. What does that stand for? That's a Threat Reduction and Infrastructure Protection section. All right? What it does is, like I mentioned to you earlier, it identifies vulnerabilities of critical infrastructure and high-risk buildings. It develops protective strategies for public and private sector entities. Okay? Also, we have a training section within our counterterrorism unit. What do? They develop and deliver counterterrorism training to all of our officers and other law enforcement agencies throughout the state. Sometimes we will go abroad. They want our training. Okay? They teach courses in such as hostile surveillance, port awareness, and different structural type of training, active shooter. Okay, all of our members of the service in the counterterrorism unit are trained in this. Okay. We also have what they call the SHIELD unit. That's the information sharing between law enforcement and the private sector. Our SHIELD unit is basically a liaison with the private sector. All right, they strive to combat terrorism through information sharing. They manage the NYPD counterterrorism, private sector, and they go to the security community. Like they'll go to the malls, so security apparatus in the malls, stuff like that, and they'll teach them. They'll give them presentations on active shooter, stuff like that, so that they're aware, because you want everybody to be informed. All right. We also have a PMO, which is the Project Management Office. All right. What they do is they devise large-scale technology systems, and that helps to facilitate terrorism investigations. Okay, that's what that does. They oversee the implementation of the grant-funded counterterrorism programs. All right, so they're very important. All these units are important. Now, we have what they call a CBRN unit, also within counterterrorism. What is that? Chemical, biological, nuclear, and explosive section. Okay, what this unit does is it researches and tests emergency technologies, and they're used to detect these weapons. Okay, chemical, biological, nuclear, or explosive devices. All right, and what they do is they develop plans to mitigate and to stop these situations, possibly, and do investigations. All right. Also, you have a World Trade Center Command. How many of you have visited the World Trade Center? Okay. Now, there's been about over 1 million people have visited so far. That was up and operational September 12th of 2011. It was up and operational. There's been over 1 million people there. We have about maybe 300 officers there, if not more. They're all specially trained as well in all the counterterrorism training. All right. Now, also what we have is a Joint Terrorist Task Force. What is our Joint Terrorist Task Force? That's comprised of NYPD detectives, FBI, and they go around the world. All right, we've had NYPD officers, detectives in Libya. We've had them in Egypt, anywhere there's hot spots. So why is that? Why do the Joint Terrorist Task Force? Anybody can tell me why? What does it help do?
Building intelligence.
Build intelligence. It builds intelligence, but what you're getting real-time actionable intelligence. Like something that goes off somewhere else, like I said, somewhere around the world, affects us right here. Because then usually what's happening there is a precursor to what they're going to try to do here. Okay? Now, we don't profile, all right? We don't, and right now there are no imminent threats. There's no threats to New York City, to the United States, but any threat, whether it be benign or not, is going to be investigated fully, all right? We don't have the luxury of getting one thing wrong. Okay? Now, with that being said, what's the main thing that we need to do as citizens here? Oh, correct. You have to remain vigilant. All right? Vigilant. All right? So what is that? How many of you heard see something, say something? Okay. They've given out the cards, 188 NYC Safe. Call the hotline. Whether you think it's benign or not, call. San Bernardino, what happened? The neighbor what? Why?
Because he didn't want to be politically correct. He wanted to be politically correct.
All right. Now, and the person kicked themselves because they said, I should have called, but I didn't want to be labeled as profiling or racist. And what happened? 13 people were killed. Okay? So you see something, say something. All right? And I want to thank you very much for inviting us tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you again. If you have any questions, we'll be here. Sure.
You mentioned two things. At the end, you talked about in San Bernardino, the neighbor who looked the other way while Islamic characters were going in and out of this house doing suspicious activities. He didn't want to be labeled a racist, so he didn't say anything. And just moments earlier, you said that the NYPD does not profile. Because you do not profile, does that somehow take away some aspects that could enable you to be more effective?
No, we go where the threats are. We don't profile, but where the threats are. Where the intelligence leads us is where we're going to go. All right, now we're not going to be pigeonholed into one thing. We're going to look at everything. All right, and that's how we conduct ourselves here with the NYPD. It's driven by intelligence. We don't profile, but we will follow up. okay? If that means somebody's feelings might get hurt, but if the information is correct and it's viable information, we have to follow through. And we're law enforcement, that was a civilian. Well,
Yeah, we've all heard that $90 million has been cut from the New York NYPD budget on counterterrorism, which to me is the definition of insanity. Is that actually happening, or is there a possibility that that's not gonna be cut?
As of now, none of that has happened. That's way down the road in another federal budget. I don't think that's till October. So, no, we don't see any cuts in any funding as of now. Our training programs are in full swing. We're training all our people in the CRC programs in the heavy weapons. There'll be more teams out there to address active shooters. I mean, you see it all in the news, the heavy weapons teams. Every day we're training people. It's a long class. It's not a one-day shoot your gun and go home. It's a whole week of training just to learn how to operate and physically hold that gun. So that's all done on overtime. So it's big money that's being spent to train these people. All this equipment that we have, that's just two little things. We got into the infrastructure stuff, US Open, when we worked those details, the amount of equipment that comes out that was paid for by grants. We all have it in our office, and we're in one borough. Every other borough has it. They all have a counterterrorism team. That's one thing we left out. There's a counterterrorism officer program in the boroughs now. Queens North was the first to do it about 3.5 years ago. What these officers are is they're police officers that actually work in the command. And they are deployed within the borough that they work. And it could be at a church. They'll go out there with a whole team of guys. Steve's a part of that program. I run that program with an inspector. We'll do a lot of deployments at high-profile locations within Queens. I know everybody's like, oh, I'm a Queens guy. I live in Queens. The cops were all going into Manhattan to do deployments. These guys and gals work within the borough that they are assigned. There's in each precinct, there is one per squad, so there's 9 police officers. We got a sergeant, 1 or 2 sergeants, and a lieutenant, and they'll go out with them. And what's twofold is that they're getting all the training that the special counterterrorism officers get. Now, they'll get the same training as them, and now when they're handling a regular family dispute on their job time, they know now to look for certain different things that the regular cop might not know. So it's a twofold for us. One, they get a lot of overtime, and they're enjoying what they're doing. They're going to different locations and doing different things and learning about the counterterrorism just within the borough. So it's a real good program. Like I said, we're up to, I think there's like, an additional to our whole counterterrorism umbrella, there's an additional, just in precinct personnel, is about another 1,000 people right on top of that. And they have all the training. So the amount of resources that are in the counterterrorism umbrella is phenomenal. We're bigger than some police departments, just our one unit. And it's not just a uniform presence. We also have a surveillance presence. We'll go out when we have large deployments, let's say like St. Patrick's Day Parade, where we have a lot of people. We will have officers that are trained just to look for people that are watching us to see what we're doing. I worked in City Field for a few years, and you get a suspicious package, somebody would say something. A lot of times, you don't know if somebody's actually watching to see how you handle it. We used to yell at the security all the time because they would walk and take that little metal thing there, and then they bring it down to the police room. If they thought it was suspicious, as we tell the cops, don't touch nothing. We got experts for that. We got the bomb squad. We got all the big guys and the big guns and the big toys to come and handle those things. But there are terrorists out there. They'll wait forever to strike. So that's why we got to handle every job like if that's a suspicious package and you really think it's something bad, I'm getting out of there. Let's get out of there. Call the experts in.
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate what they did in the subway system. I think the slashings went up a lot. So what they're doing is they're developing a team. They already started, but now they're going to get a its own team of guys, officers and stuff that'll just work extra on the train patrols, because that's where the spike is, so maybe it was the resources that they were putting, that's maybe what they were saying.
Did they put metal detectors into the subways?
No,
Into the entrances or anything?
not that I heard, no.
Are these people that are patrolling in the subway system, are they plainclothes or are they all uniformed?
You have both.
You have both?
But there's gonna be, that unit that he's setting up, the chief of the transit bureau, that's a uniform presence unit. You know, a lot of these are happening late at night or, you know, from that 8 at night to 4 o'clock in the morning, tour. So they'll, resource it up and, try to get a real handle on it.
One more question.
Whose responsibility is it to cover the airports and the ports for counterterrorism?
We do have within, the airports is the Port Authority, but we have liaisons within the JTTF task force that have Port Authority, investigators on there. And the ports, we do have a harbor unit within counterterrorism, plus our own harbor unit, but there's also harbor, the port police.
All the major airports in the United States have overlapping jurisdictions. The local police, the state police, the federal police are all involved, as well as the Coast Guard and other units as well. All right, so it's not just one entity. It depends on what's going on, and then somebody takes the leadership role. All right, again, guys, thank you very much. Get home safe.